Good evening. Welcome to the April 18th Village Board regular meeting. This meeting is now called to order. Begin with the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Trustee Bazemore?
Present.
Trustee Codman?
Present.
Trustee Herrera?
Present.
And Mayor Garrity.
Present.
Okay, do we have any mayors and trustees announcements?
I do, but I'll let my colleagues go first. Deputy Mayor Codman, do you have anything to announce this week?
Sure. Sure, it's all about the music,
All right.
which is great. And the music is really soon. It's tomorrow night. It's Organ Groove Night. And really excited to have Paul Connors and also John Doty. And this week, Baron Raymond is on alto sax. He was inducted into the New York Blues Hall of Fame, so he's a fine player, and that starts at 7 o'clock at the Elks Lodge. That's the Thursday night Organ Groove. 7 o'clock, Thursday night, Elks Lodge. Thanks.
All right. Trustee Herrera.
Yes, thank you. So I'd like one announcement. I invite you to join me at the Ossining Matters. I'm sorry, one more? Did you mic one? Yes, I mean, there's 3 mics here, so.
Is there enough?
None set up for Trustee Levin.
Am I on now?
Wow.
I apologize. Good evening. I just had one invitation. That was to please consider joining me at the Ossining Matters annual benefit, this year entitled The Art of Enriching Education. And that is this Saturday, April 21st at the Bethany Arts Center. And if you can't make it, they have a pretty good online auction where you could consider making a donation. Ossining Matters is a great organization that really is able to support our schools in a way that, you know, the district can beyond its budget. And as a student and as an alumni, I could truly attest to how those funds have been used. So if you could make it to Saturday, that'd be great. Thank you.
Trustee Bazemore?
No announcements tonight.
Okay, before you head on over to the always wonderful Ossining Matters event Saturday night, join us down at the waterfront for the Green Ossining Earth Day Festival. It is the 8th annual Green Ossining Earth Day Festival. It's the biggest Earth Day festival that happens in Westchester County. And there's live music, delicious food, local vendors, activities, fun for everyone, and it looks like it'll be a nice sunny day. So I look forward to seeing you there. Then because it is Earth Day month, we've got a lot of great stuff happening environmentally. 2 items to mark your calendar for on April 27th. That morning at 11 a.m., the town has invited us to join them in celebrating Arbor Day with a tree planting at Lewis Engel Park, our lovely waterfront park, just a few days after the Earth Day Festival. And then that evening, on a special night, will be the Ossining Documentary and Discussion Series program, and the name of the film is An Inconvenient Sequel. You may recall the first one, An Inconvenient Truth, which got a lot of people's attention, and this is an inconvenient sequel. A number of years have gone by, and the conversation has certainly changed, and the circumstances in our world have certainly changed. We've got a terrific panel of folks, some of whom are familiar to those of us in village government, not least of which is Town Supervisor in Mamaroneck, Nancy Seligson, and John Nolan, who is the founder and the head of the Land Use Law Center at Pace Law School, who is always a good resource for us in municipal government. So I hope to see you there. That's at 6:30 at the Ossining Public Library on Friday, the 27th. You can learn more at ossiningdocumentaries.org. Madam Clerk.
We'll move on to administrative reports, and we'll begin with Village Manager Deborah McDonald.
Thank you very much. I want to start out by saying a very warm goodbye to Linda McMahon. She served for 10 years in the village as our personnel director, and she has brought a lot of changes to our personnel and really offered up some great methodology and some great professionalism to our office, and we wish her well. in her retirement, and we wish Tanya Orr, who is replacing her, the best of luck. So if you stop in the personnel office as of Friday, there will be a new face there. I did want to let everyone know that we have had our emergency management team has met and talked about the summer. It will be my first summer here, and we talked about all the different festivals and events that go on during the summer, and just wanted to let everyone know that our team is prepared to make sure that everyone has a great and joyous event and a wonderful summer. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
We'll move on to Corporation Counsel.
Yeah. Stuart Kahan.
My reports tonight will be rather dry, but I hope they will be informative. While the village is currently not considering legislation with regard to short-term rentals such as Airbnbs and things like that, I did want to comment. I was at the quarterly Corporation Counsel Roundtable, which actually John Nolan runs at Pace University. We were there. I was there last Thursday, and we had a presentation from one of the attorneys who is the attorney for the city of Beacon, which is currently now, in fact, debating short-term rental legislation. But a couple of things were very interesting. Beacon, which is not that much larger than Ossining and is also a riverfront location, in 2017 had 9,100 visitors who stayed via Airbnb, which is, they were shocked at the numbers of people. If you go onto Airbnb and put in Ossining, you will see loads of flags pop up. This is not to talk about ordinances or anything like that, but one of the things that we discussed at the roundtable, and I should point out it's actually a large rectangle, but we call it the Corporation Counsel Roundtable, it just sounds good, is that the state building code has very explicit rules with regard to bed and breakfast. Specifically, if you are taking a one-family house and converting it, and that means just making it where one room might be part of a rental. For example, you need to have certain sprinkler systems in your exit hallways. You have to have specific means of egress out windows or out the doors, which if you were in an old Victorian house from, let's say, pre-1910, or current homes under the current code, you probably have that means of egress, but if you fall within the vast majority of homes in the middle, you don't. I bring that out because while Beacon is discussing whether or not they should regulate these Airbnbs or other types of businesses, their building inspector has made it very clear that if he finds locations which are in fact in violation of the state code, he will write those violations up. And it's just for folks in this area who may well be, offering their homes for Airbnb purposes or whatever other purposes there are through those type of entities. Understand that there are specific regulations that the state requires you to follow to convert your home for that particular use. And as I said, the most important one relates to sprinklers, but there are also other things that need to be done. And it's just a word of advice to just keep that in mind as that happens, because you're seeing a greater proliferation. As I said, in Beacon, 9,100 people who were using it last year.
Wow.
It's expected that Beacon will probably adopt something within the next, I would say, 1 to 2 months, because they've been debating it, fairly a lot. There's been a lot of folks from Airbnb up there. Also, another point that was made is that if you are a homeowner and you are thinking of converting your home for this purpose, one thing to keep in mind is that it is likely a default under your mortgage, because most mortgages do not permit you to, in fact, perform commercial work on your property. So you should be careful about that. And while Airbnb does afford its clients a $1 million insurance policy, many folks do this sort of room sharing without any insurance, and the fact is that most homeowners' insurance policies would not extend coverage in this situation. So again, it's just something to be aware of as you go forward with that.
Thank you. That's interesting. Beacon also has some lovely hotels. So
Well, although-
they've got folks coming there and staying in all kinds of places. They really are quite a draw.
They're finding that, but it was interesting to contrast Beacon with Yonkers, because Yonkers has 4 name hotel chains there, and they are getting a lot of pushback from the hotels because there is no occupancy tax for the Airbnbs. So that's sort of like the next thing that's going to be happening. The other thing I just want to discuss briefly with the board, because there may be some questions about it. As you may recall, when the Tax Reform Act was signed by President Trump in 2017, one of the things that changed is that the deduction for personal, state and local taxes was limited to $10,000. And what a number of municipalities in Westchester did was they issued their tax warrants early so that people could prepay. As part of the governor's budget package, which was signed into law last month, there were amendments to the education law, the general municipal law, and the real property tax law to permit the creation of what are basically called school district and local government charitable contribution funds. Let me say this from the outset. There are no rules yet with regard to these funds. As far as I know, there is no municipality in the state of New York that has actually done it. We did discuss this at the roundtable on Thursday, and it was sort of like, no, you go first, no, you go first. So we'll have to see. But what it effectively is this: a school district, a city, a county, a town, or a village can create a charitable fund. It's separate and distinct from the municipality itself. And an individual would get there and might get let's say they get their tax bill, let's say their tax bill is $25,000. They can make a charitable donation to that fund in the amount of $25,000. And they would then get a receipt back from the chief financial officer of that municipality. And they would then get a credit towards their tax bill equal to 95%, which is what the law says, of their tax bill. Now, this is done because there is currently no limit on the charitable contribution side. So effectively, if it is considered a charitable contribution, you should be able to deduct the amount of the taxes. The problem is that no one knows if the IRS is in fact going to approve that. You may have read that the county executive in Rockland County will not participate because he is convinced it's simply not going to pass IRS scrutiny. But there are other local municipalities that are giving thought to this. And there are some aspects where the municipality can make decisions. Municipalities are not mandated to do this. They're not required. It is an option that is there for them to do it. And the 95% credit is also a number that can change. Also, if an individual does not take the credit in the first year, they have up to 3 years to effectively request a refund if they in fact make the payment into the charitable fund. And what happens is at the end of the tax year, the monies in the charitable fund can then be transferred to the general fund of the municipality. The charitable fund can earn interest, they can invest, but it is presented as a way to perhaps get around the $10,000 cap. Similar legislation is now pending in New Jersey and in Connecticut and in some other states where that $10,000 limit has created problems. But I just want to point out that it is law in New York now. We are waiting for regulations to be promulgated by State Department of Taxation and Finance. At the NICOM conference in May, this will be a subject of discussion. There's also a State Bar Association conference on this on April 27th. So as I get more information, I'll let you folks know, but I did want you to know that was out there because questions may arise. Because again, even if a school district decides to do it, the municipality is not obligated to, or vice versa. And you're getting, you're reading, and on the blogs that I get, they're all over the place. Some are absolutely adamant they will never do it because it is a great deal of paperwork that becomes involved because you are setting up a completely separate entity that has to have separate accounts and everything like that. And one of the things that we discussed on Thursday is that any municipality that does this would have to put language into whatever document they're giving that they're not providing tax advice. So if it turns out that the IRS finds that in fact you can't take this deduction, and there is then interest and penalties that are owed, it can't go back to the municipality. So it's very messy at this point, but we'll keep you advised.
Well, I'm glad you're so proactively looking into this with other attorneys from around the county and around the state. That's, sounds like there's at least as many questions as we had this time, or earlier this year when the law for, or I guess it was the end of last year, when we
Right.
came to realize that there was going to be this $10,000 cap. And I'm not sure that we have any more answers than we did then, maybe more questions.
More questions?
So thank you for trying to get some answers for
Sure.
us.
Yes, you may, of course you can.
Chief Sylvester.
That's a tough act to follow. Thank you, Marion. Only a couple things from us tonight. This week, we are going through our first half of the year firearms qualifications, so that's going to be our training for the month. On Friday, I'll be participating in an opioid forum at Phelps Hospital with the Westchester Psychological Association. So good opportunity for us there to sort of delve into that. Hasn't been as big of a problem here as it has been in many other communities, but I'm grateful to see that one of the trainings coming up at Westchester County that we intend to participate in is a crisis management program where we'd partner with psychological services to sort of address not only addiction issues, but also just mental illness in general. Autism Awareness Month is continuing, and this next week we'll be rolling out or a reminder of a program that we've had for a while that hasn't really had a lot of participation, and that's Operation Kind Find, where residents will be able to register special needs family members and let us know any particular information that might be helpful, particularly for those that may be nonverbal or any other helpful things. We've had incidents in the past where especially young people may walk off or leave their homes. So the more information we have with trying to help those families and getting them all of the assistance that we can provide, the better it is. So there'll be lots of stuff out about that coming out next week. We've got a whole program to roll out with that. We're currently building out our summer calendar, and all of our events should be released like in the next 2 weeks, which is going to include all the things we've done in the past with Cops and Kids Sports and Movies in the Park and Coffee with a Cop and the Village Fair and all that kind of stuff we have coming up. Our least fun item for tonight is going to be a road closure. Monday to Friday next week, Central Avenue will be closed the length of Central Avenue for Con Edison work. There'll be a police officer at the top of Central Avenue to facilitate any of the businesses that are at the top of the hill there, but through traffic will be restricted. So for those that are commuting or getting to the train station, those are usually the people that make most use of that road. Especially in the morning and the evening times, just so they'll know. We're going to put maps out and all that information specific, but it's going to be closed 24 hours beginning Monday morning, and that work should wrap up next Friday afternoon. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to organizational announcements. Is there anyone here who has an organizational announcement they'd like to make?
Mayor Garrity, I actually
Oh,
forgot
please.
an announcement if I don't.
Excellent.
So I forgot last week. So I am accepting applications from high school juniors, seniors, and college students for an internship program beginning Monday, May, I believe, 14th or 15th, depending if we get the qualified applicants that could comply with our regs here. But if you know anyone who wants an inside look on how local government works and wants to be able to work with myself in my capacity as a trustee and also our department heads, that this would be a great opportunity. You could just send a cover letter or a resume or a 1-minute video to herrera@villageofossining.org. I really encourage anyone who really wants a chance to have an opportunity to work in government for the next, whether it's a week or a month or however long your program allows you to please, take advantage of it. Thank you.
Very well.
We'll move on to comments on any village board resolutions. You have 4 minutes to comment on any and all of the resolutions, and kindly state your name and your residential address. Okay. We'll now move on to the resolutions. Resolved, the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the minutes of the April 4th, 2018 regular meeting as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
On the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolved, the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the voucher detail report dated April 18th, 2018, in the amount of $529,286.27. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Good. On the board?
Sure. About 130,000 of that amount is capital and related to the Indian Brook water treatment upgrade, so that's part of that. There were some other larger invoices in there for repairs and improvements in Village Hall. And so this was some good money well spent, and we're looking forward to getting our new water plant online as soon as we get all the design done. I had a chance to talk to Andy Tees, and it's all moving along very well. So we should be hearing from him fairly soon on where the plans are.
Good. I believe we're getting, he's going to be with us next week to discuss some of the programs they have going on. I'm not sure that it's necessarily an update on this, but if there's anything to report, I'm sure he can at our next work session. Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Whereas the Village of Ossining is located on land that once was the tribal homeland of the Sing Sing American Indians, people from time immemorial, and part of the land purchased in 1686 by Frederick Phillips, Lord of the Manor of Phillipsburg, and whereas the Village of Ossining was formerly known as the Village of Sing Sing and was incorporated in 1813 as the first chartered village in Westchester County, and whereas in 1901 the village changed its name to Ossining, and whereas the Village of Ossining has over 200 years of well-documented history, including several buildings, sites, and structures that are officially listed on the historic registers at the federal, state, and local levels, which buildings, sites, and structures has significant historical and architectural attributes. And whereas in furtherance of the goal of the historic preservation, the Village of Ossining, as a certified local government, has authorized the Historical Preservation Commission pursuant to Section 270-25 of the Village Code to A, recommend the designation of landmarks and historic districts to the Village Board, B, decide upon applications for certificates of appropriateness to be issued to owners of properties in historic districts or which have been designated pursuant to the Village Code. C, hear applications and make recommendations to the Board of Trustees for donation of facade easements, and D, educate owners of historical buildings and the residents of the village on issues of historic preservation, including the museum in the streets and publication of the Ossining Guide to the Historic Buildings, Sites, and Structures. And whereas may have been designated by the National Trust for Historic Preservation as Historic Preservation Month, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining declares May 2018 as Historic Preservation Month in the Village of Ossining and supports This Place Matters campaign of the National Trust for Historic Preservation to encourage village residents to celebrate those places that are meaningful to them and the Ossining community, and to learn about and promote the village's historic places. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board, does anyone want to comment on May being Historic Preservation Month? Just,
I think it's a great,
idea.
I think for all the things that were said in the resolution, it certainly speaks for itself. My participation in the Ossining Historic Cemeteries Conservancy is certainly reflective of that, and it's one of many volunteer groups that support and pursue history and historic preservation and all the things that go along with it. And it's really a testament to understanding where we come from and how we got here now. So.
right. I'm glad you mentioned the historic cemeteries. And Mary Ann, you've been very active with the Ossining Historical Society for a number of
For
years.
many years.
Yes. Ossining is very, very blessed with many historians and many people who really care about the history of our community. So we actually have some very rich records of our history, and it's very much alive in Ossining. And this was brought to us by members of the Historic Preservation Commission, and we are very grateful for their work. They partnered with the Ossining Historical Society in putting together the Museum in the Streets, which is the most recent big project that helps us acknowledge and celebrate many of the architectural interesting architecture that represent the history of Ossining throughout our downtown. So if you haven't had a chance to look at those beautiful plaques, stop, take a look, and right where Main Street meets the aqueduct is the big map that tells you where all, I want to say 25 plaques are that run through the downtown. That is, it'll take you more than one day probably to fully appreciate them. So definitely make use of that. And May is a perfect month to do it because it should be good weather.
Hopefully.
Sorry to say.
Hopefully.
All right, Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Whereas pursuant to Chapter 100 and 171 of the Code of the Village of Ossining, the authorized representatives of the business Boathouse, 11 Westerly, has made application to the village clerk as licensing officer for the cabaret licenses for live music. And whereas pursuant to Section 100-3 and 100-5 of the code, the village clerk has caused an investigation into said application and referred the same to the Board of Trustees for final approval. Now therefore be it resolved that pursuant to the code, the Board of Trustees hereby approves a cabaret license for Boathouse, 11 Westerly, for the 2018 calendar as follows. Boathouse, Sunday through Saturday, band and DJ music, 12 p.m. to 2 a.m. Do I have a motion?
So
Moved.
Somebody want to turn that into a second?
Second.
Do whatever you want with that, Mary Ann. On the board?
Aye.
Madam Clerk, all in favor?
Aye.
We're so excited to have another, to renew this cabaret license.
Whereas
Move right ahead.
pursuant to Chapter 100 and 171 of the Code of the Village of Ossining, the authorized representative of the business, Ossining Elks Lodge, 118 Croton Avenue, has made application to the village clerk as licensing officer for cabaret licenses for live music. And whereas pursuant to Section 100-3 and 100-5 of the Code, the village clerk has caused an investigation into said application and referred the same to the Board of Trustees for final approval. Now therefore, it is resolved that pursuant to the Code, the Board of Trustees hereby approves a cabaret license for Ossining Elks Lodge, 118 Croton Avenue, for the 2018 calendar year. Ossining Elks Lodge, Friday through Sunday, and Tuesday, band and DJ music, 4 p.m. to 2 a.m. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board? You want to comment, trustee?
Oh, I'll be abstaining. I'm a member of the Elks. So
Okay.
Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
abstain.
Thanks, John. Whereas pursuant to the village's procurement policy adopted by the Board of Trustees on January 3rd, 2018, pursuant to General Municipal Law, Section 104B 2F, the procurement policy may contain circumstances when, or types of procurement for which, in the sole discretion of the governing body, the solicitation of alternative proposals or quotations may not be in the best interest of the municipality. In the following circumstances, it may not be in the best interest of the Village of Ossining to solicit quotations to document the basis for not accepting the lowest bid. B, emergency purchase section pursuant to Section 103 of the General Municipal Law. Due to the nature of this exception, these goods and services must be purchased immediately, and a delay in order to seek alternate proposals may threaten the life, health, safety, and welfare of the residents. This section does not preclude alternate proposals if time permits. And whereas the village has determined that the boiler at the Joseph G. Caputo Community Center requires emergency replacement as a result of a hole which cannot be repaired, and whereas the boiler provides heat and hot water for a significant part of the community center, and whereas Carrion Walsh, Inc. is the preferred local vendor for HVAC equipment and natural gas boilers, and the company has proposed to furnish labor and materials to install a new Lochinvar FTX 600 replacement boiler for $24,245. Now therefore be it resolved that the village manager is authorized to enter into an agreement with Carrion Walsh, Inc., 529 North State Road, Briarcliff Manor, New York, for the installation of one new Lochinvar FTX 600 replacement boiler and associated work at the Joseph G. Caputo Community Center. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board? You want to comment on this, Debbie? Is there anything further to say that wasn't included in the resolution? This is unusual for us. We don't usually, but as it states, it's an emergency purchase. And we can welcome Bill with this, too.
I can. This was a very unexpected expenditure for us. The boiler was expected to last another 5 years, but there was some corrosion on it, and like it says in the resolution, it cannot be fixed. The boiler does heat the pool as well as provide hot water to the showers and also the heat to the building. So it is something that needs to be replaced immediately. We did put it on order, and it should be here on Friday, and we expect it to be installed on Monday. I can tell you that staff is there every day trying to keep it running and keep it going. Just yesterday, our staff spent almost 6 hours just keeping it running. So this is an emergency, and it was unforeseen.
So far, we've been able to keep the facility open and running as usual. It just takes a lot more work to make that
It is.
happen.
It's just
Okay.
taking manpower to keep it going.
Okay, thank you for explaining that. Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Whereas the village's Board of Trustees previously authorized the village clerk to advertise for bids, contract OFD 17-04, furnish and deliver one new 1,500 GPM pumper fire apparatus, and whereas the only bid was received from Premier Fire Apparatus, Inc., 1564 Route 9G, Hyde Park, New York, and whereas the bid from Premier Fire Apparatus was opened on March 21st, 2018, and whereas the submitted bid was reviewed by the Corporation Council, who, after reviewing the submitted bid and comparing the bid to the village's bid specifications, determined that there were significant differences resulting in the recommendation by Corporation Council that the bid be rejected. Now therefore be it resolved that the bid submitted by Premier Fire Apparatus, Inc. to furnish and deliver one new 1,500 GPM pumper fire apparatus be rejected, and be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution shall be forwarded to Premier Fire Apparatus. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board?
Yeah, this is unfortunate. There are a lot of circumstances around, around us having to reject the bid, not the least of which was that the company didn't follow instructions, and they also did not provide certain assurances and paperwork that were necessary for us to accept the bid. I'm kind of disappointed that this happened. I'd also want to point out that there are some other circumstances in which the actual seller of the vehicle changed from the original time that we were looking to get the bid, and that may have been one of the reasons that we had a circumstance where, circumstances changed, the instructions weren't followed, and it's our fiduciary responsibility to reject the bid at this point. I've had discussions with the chiefs, and I've also had discussions with the village manager, and we need to reconstruct another bid so we can move forward.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolved, the 2017 general fund budget is modified to eliminate the amount borrowed for tax certiorari claims and sidewalk assessments as followed, and I won't read everything. Total decrease to general fund appropriations, $290,000. Decrease general fund estimated revenues, $320,000. Decrease general fund estimated revenues for a total of $30,000. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolved, the 2017 general fund budget is modified to appropriate PEG access revenues for government access cable programming equipment as follows. Increased general fund appropriation, $7,662.64, and increased general fund estimated revenue in $7,662.64. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolved, the 2017 general fund budget is modified to transfer $105,001 unexpended appropriations for LED street lighting installment, purchase loan to the debt service fund, and to transfer unexpended appropriations for additional 2016 serial bond issue debt service interests as below. Total decrease to general fund appropriation, $107,415. Increased general fund appropriation, $107,415. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolve the 2017 general water and sewer funds budget are modified to transfer monies between various appropriation accounts for unanticipated expenditures during the year as summarized by the village treasurer, and be it further resolved that the village department heads are authorized to balance their departmental budgets within object item categories or between object item categories, between 100 personnel series services accounts, 200 equipment accounts, and/or 400 to 500 contractual accounts, subject to the approval of the village treasurer or village manager. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolve the 2017 water fund and sewer fund budgets are modified to transfer excess available appropriations as follows. Total decrease to water and sewer fund appropriations, $27,753. Increase water and sewer fund appropriation, $27,753. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We got stuck. Resolve the 2017 Section 8 Housing Program Fund budget is modified to appropriate excess HUD revenues received and to adjust other revenue appropriation of accounts as follows. Increase Section 8 Housing Program Fund appropriations, $98,642. Increase Section 8 Housing Program Fund estimated revenues, $97,348. Decrease Section 8 Housing Program Fund appropriation, $6,294. Decrease Section 8 Housing Program Fund estimated revenues of $5,000. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Whereas by resolution of the Board of Trustees on May 6, 2015, and later amended on March 16, 2016, a capital project was established and modified for the estimated engineering and construction management costs aggregating $62,550 associated with the Spring and Main Street intersection capital project. And whereas in 2017, the village board had subsequently authorized and then rescinded a serial bond resolution for additional funding for said project. And whereas additional engineering expenses related to said project have aggregated $67,812.55, for which project funding is requested from the general fund, now therefore be resolved, the Spring Main Street intersection capital project budget is modified as follows. Increased general fund appropriation, $67,812. Increased general fund appropriation, $67,812.55. Increased capital projects appropriation, $67,812.15. Increased capital projects estimated revenues, $67,812.55. Project number 2160, Spring Main Street intersection capital project, the current project budget $62,550 and the modified project budget of $130,362.55. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
If you second it, then you can ask questions and we can have a discussion.
Second.
On the board?
No, I just would like either village manager McDonald, if you could just explain why we're doing this. I just received a couple of calls, and just to break it down, or that's all. Or
Tom looks ready to jump up and explain this to
People
us.
see Main Street and Spring Street, so I just
You're,
want to make
you're
sure
very
that-
busy tonight, and also, I just wanted to make sure, is it supposed to say general fund workers' compensation? just seemed surprising.
Good evening, and
Welcome.
thank you.
Good evening.
Actually, I'm glad you did call me up, because as I was following along in the resolution, there should have been a decrease to the workers' compensation expenditures.
Okay.
The idea was to utilize some of the unexpended monies in the workers' comp employee benefits account to transfer to the capital projects fund to pay for the project expenditures. And I'll try to explain what I can about this project. It was initially going to be a traditional intersection at Spring and Main Street, and then the idea of the roundabout was brought about, and so the engineer was doing work for both a planned intersection improvements and was also doing some of the preliminary work on the roundabout, including, work for the public presentation. And meanwhile, the village board had adopted a serial bond resolution to pay for the roundabout improvements, which was later rescinded by the village board. So we have a project that had engineering expenditures for work to be done at that intersection. Part of it was for a traditional intersection with a new street light, and part of it was for proposed roundabouts. And right now, I don't have any revenue. I don't have sufficient revenues in the capital fund to pay for these expenditures that have already been incurred.
That's sufficient for me. Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Whereas by resolution of the Board of Trustees on July 1st, 2015, a capital project was established for the replacement of street light bulbs with energy-efficient LED bulbs at an estimated cost of $650,000, to be financed by the project contractor through an installment purchase loan and retired over 5 years from projected savings in the cost of streetlight electricity. And whereas after the initial streetlight inventory, it was determined that additional streetlights would need to be replaced at an additional estimated cost of $256,326 under the contract. Now therefore be it resolved that the LED street lighting replacement capital project is modified as follows. Increase capital projects appropriation $256,326. Increase capital projects estimated revenues $256,326. Project number 2162. LED street lighting replacement, original project budget $650,000. Modified project budgets $906,326. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
On the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolved that upon the recommendation of the Fire Chief, Terrence L. Hubbard, Ossining, New York, was elected an active member of the Ossining Hose Company Number 1 for interior firefighting at their regular meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolved that upon the recommendation of the Fire Chief, Luis A. Galzara, Ossining was elected an active member of Monitor Hose Company Number 4 for interior firefighting at their regular meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Comments from the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolved that upon the recommendation of the Fire Chief, Jose M. Nieves, Ossining, New York, was elected an active member of Hollow Hose Company Number 5 for interior firefighting at their regular meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments from the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? This is the Fire Department tax exemption for 2019. Resolved, the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the following fireman's tax exemption for the year 2019. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Comments from the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. That moves us into continuing business of the board, leaf blower legislation.
So, Corporation Counsel Kahan, thank you so much. You circulated to us some of the considerations that we're going to pick up on last week's conversation, and I'm disappointed, and I know Trustee Levin is disappointed. She did text me, she emailed me before the meeting she would be late, and she texted me that she's stuck in traffic right now, so I'm sure she'll want to comment further after tonight if she doesn't make it by the end of our conversation. But could you maybe update the public on what are some of the terms that are now being considered in more precisely than we initially discussed last week?
Yes, Mayor, thank you very much. Based upon the conversations that we had last week following Dr. Weinstein's presentation and some other discussions we've had before that, I've proposed a few revisions to Chapter 178, which is our noise ordinance. And the first, and these all relate solely to gas-powered leaf blowers, so that should be clear. First would be that gas-powered leaf blowers shall be used only during the following periods of the year: March 1 through June 1, and September 15 through December 15. And that would be during the times that are already set forth in the statute, which I believe is 8 a.m. until sundown, Monday through Friday, except for holidays, and 9 a.m. to sundown, Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays. Further, the proposal is that in addition, no more than 2 handheld or backpack gas-powered leaf blowers may be used at a time unless the property that is being cleared is greater than 1/2 acre. So that if you're 1/2 acre or less, you would only be permitted to use 1 gas-powered leaf blower, again, during the periods of time that you would be allowed to. What's consistent with this proposal, as well as with which you see in other jurisdictions, is that during the summer months, which would be in this case June 2nd until September 14th, gas-powered leaf blowers would not be permitted to be used within the village of Ossining. Further, there are a couple of there was one particular request that was made by Trustee Levin, is that with regard to this particular violation, is that the first time a person is found to be in violation, it would be a warning. So that they would be told that they are in violation, and then after that, the fine structure would come in if that occurs. It should be noted that our noise ordinance already provides that the owner of the equipment, and if it's a landscape contractor, the owner of the business itself, would be also liable for an appearance ticket or violation in the event that someone is violating this portion of the ordinance. It also provides now that violations of the entire noise ordinance chapter may be supported by evidence which would include but not be limited to timestamped photographs and videos, records of complaints, and sworn witness statements. So what this would do is it would prohibit leaf blowers except during what you effectively would call fall and spring cleanup periods. Otherwise, you would not be permitted to use gas-powered leaf blowers. There's no exception for homeowners, and this ordinance, God bless you, does not have a particular restriction. This is something I wrote to the board about later this afternoon with regard to municipalities, schools, or anything along that. It's basically a blanket ban for what would effectively be 6 months, but the most important part would be during the summer months. That's consistent with most other municipalities. Most other municipalities sort of put in the other way, which is the periods of time when you can't operate. This is more consistent with the recently passed Irvington ordinance, which is the periods of time when you can operate the gas-powered leaf blowers. And if you're operating during those periods of time, again, you have to follow the time periods, and you are also still subject to certain noise ordinances, but generally, the way our noise ordinance is written, if you're using a gas-powered leaf blower or any other lawn equipment during the periods of time that are permitted, again, 8 a.m. to sundown, Monday to Friday, except holidays, 9 a.m. to sundown, Saturday, Sundays, and holidays, you're not affected by the decibel limit does not apply, but if you're attempting to do it outside those limits, it drops down to 45 decibels in a residential area. So that's pretty much the provisions that we would put in there and would put those restrictions in there with regard to specifically just gas-powered leaf blowers. We've not extended it to any other type of lawn equipment. I did not come across any ordinance within Westchester County, or frankly within New York State, that is an outright ban on the equipment at all times. But as I said, it's either, but the period of time is generally mid-May to mid-September, possibly till October 1st, where it's simply not permitted by anyone. Some municipalities do have exemptions for golf courses, tennis clubs, schools, things like that, but that's actually more the exception than the rule.
Comments from the board?
Comments over here.
My only comment is, after we discussed it last week, we're pretty unanimous as once we get a piece to consider, we will include all stakeholders, which I'm pretty sure is still something that we all agree. I kind of just, I don't know, it's not really an issue, but it is a concern that we have an exemption from a rule. So, like, I know that so you mentioned that the municipality would have an exemption or exception from the, is that what you meant, or did I not understand it correctly?
No, Trustee Hura, you're correct. For example, Irvington, their recently passed statute has the following exemption. Golf and tennis clubs and municipal employees performing their regular duties, provided that any leaf blower may not be used within 100 feet of the nearest residence.
Okay.
That's an exemption there. Another example is the City of Rye, which provides that the section shall not apply to the following entities and activities: municipal schools, religious institutions, membership clubs, golf courses, hospitals and retirement communities, cemeteries, driveway, road paving, and sealing activities, except that any leaf blower shall be used shall be minimized to the maximum extent practicable in proximity to residences. So that's the two, more extreme in terms of exemptions, but most of them generally don't, exempt out municipalities or something like that. These are the two that have those specifically in their ordinance.
And the way that it's been, the draft of language that we've been looking at to our noise ordinance does not exempt the village in particular.
It does not exempt. It doesn't have
contain any of those exemptions.
That is correct. Everyone would be subject to it during that 6-month ban period.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure.
And I'll just, for folks who are listening to this conversation this week and didn't hear our conversation last week, we received a letter, the town did as well, and in fact, they discussed potential leaf blower legislation in the town last night at their meeting. We got a letter from Green Ossining with a lot of their reasons for recommending that we would have a partial ban for part of the year. And in that, they did provide us with a list of 14 municipalities in Westchester, which doesn't even include Irvington. They're the newest. They've come on board more recently. And their ban is particularly focused usually in the summer months in these. So we were also looking at the winter months as well. There are some distinctions, some little differences, as Corporation Counsel was referencing. One of the ones some of the language that Stuart recommended to us was that if you're talking about a property that's under a half acre, even when they are allowed to use gas-powered leaf blowers, it be limited to 2 gas-powered leaf blowers.
One gas or backpack under a half acre or less. So
It's only one.
Right, but you'd be able to use 2 if you're at a half acre or greater.
Only 2?
Let me just see how I have it here. I believe that, in addition, no more than 2 handheld or backpack gas-powered leaf blowers may be used at a time unless the property is being cleared as greater than 1/2 acre. So actually, I apologize. No more than 2 may be used at a time. If the property is greater than 1/2 acre, you could actually go more than that. It's
You
two
could
is
have
at
as
the-
many as you want if you're talking about several acres. That
Right.
makes sense. So it is two for, up to two
Yes.
for up under a 1/2 acre
That would be
during
correct.
the
I apologize.
fall and spring
Right.
months. I just wanted to make sure that I understood it, because I'm not sure that, I think that's a little different than some of the other communities. And I'll say, I want to echo what Trustee Herrera said, which is that we're not in a hurry to pass this, in the next couple of weeks, because there's a lot of people that haven't weighed in yet. We have spoken with local businesses. We've begun speaking with local businesses that might be directly impacted by this. We've certainly heard from community members. It's a question of quality of life. It's a question of the health and safety of the people using it, and the health and safety of the community. Those are all considerations. But this, if there is a ban, that it will not be in place for this fall at this point, because I think it's really important for us to have a public discussion, because this is something that impacts people's businesses and people's livelihoods and people's community in a really tangible way. So one of the times that people can come and comment on it is this Saturday at Earth Day. The town and village have a booth, and we are going to invite folks, if you'd like to comment on leaf blowers, for, against, concerns, suggestions. We'll be there to hear from you then. And we'll be talking about further opportunities to engage with the public on this as well. And I believe there might be some folks who'd like to even speak tonight during visitor recognition. Further comments and questions on this point? All right, then we'll put this on for a future work session.
That's fine.
The next one is a very heavy agenda, so I think we might wait until a couple of work sessions in May. We'll probably try and cover it in May at some point. All right. During visitor recognition, anybody who wants to can come and comment. Tonight, yes, it's at the end of the meeting. No, you're fine.
Madam Mayor, one brief thing. As this board will recall, a few months back, the board authorized the village manager to enter into an agreement with Annie Rodriguez with regard to some of the cat shelters that are on village property. That agreement expires on May the 6th. I'm recommending a 3-month extension till August the 5th of 2018, which would allow me to develop a more permanent ordinance to present to the board at a work session with regard to the issue with regard to the cats. But this way, at least the status quo would remain in place until August the 5th. I've discussed this with Deborah Hamilton, who's an attorney and who's been working with Ms. Rodriguez with regard to this, and they're appreciative of that as well. So I would just like to present that to the board. We can have perhaps a greater discussion next week, although I know it's a lengthy calendar, but I did want to just bring that to the board's attention, that we were looking to extend that for 3 months so that we can get the legislation moving.
I believe we do have it on the tentative agenda. I am hoping that it's one of the quicker items on the
Hope so,
agenda,
too.
since we discussed it at length when we did the initial agreement. But thank you.
Sure.
Welcome, Trustee Levin. We just had a brief discussion updating folks on the terms that have been recommended for the leaf blowers. And I know that's something that you've been very involved in, and we know that there's some folks who may want to comment on it during visitor recognition. I don't think that we've been recommending anything different than what was circulated by email. But we did make the point that we're going to be having significant opportunities to engage with the public, the first of which will be, or the next of which will be at Earth Day, if folks want to stop by the Village Town booth and let us know their thoughts. Not on there.
Sorry about my lateness. I had an event in New Rochelle. The traffic was unexpectedly worse than I thought it would be.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
have any comments. I saw all the back and forths, and I'm actually looking sort of missed here. Thanks.
All right.
Do we have any new business of the board?
We do. So
We can do that we may want to do that during executive session, if you would like. We could do a brief executive now.
well, yes, I think because we want to, we may culminate in a vote.
Yes.
So it would be best if we could do a very brief executive session right now.
Okay.
And then we will come right back out. Don't be impatient. I think this will be very brief. And then we'll have visitor recognition.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
defendant Megan Pressman, and whereas Deborah Pressman's operation of the motor vehicle was negligent, resulting in a collision with the Village of Ossining Police Department vehicle number 119, resulting in substantial property damage to the police vehicle, and whereas efforts to resolve the village's property damage claim have been unsuccessful, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining authorizes the Corporation Counsel or his designee to undertake such litigation as necessary to prosecute an action for damages against Deborah S. Pressman and Megan Pressman resulting from the March 31st, 2017 motor vehicle accident. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. That now brings us to visitor recognition. Is there anyone who's come to address the board? Kindly state your name and your residential address.
My name is Donna Sharrett. I live on 84 Morningside Drive, Ossining, New York.
Welcome.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I watched your recent work session, and I would like to discuss the possible leaf blower ban. I have some additional information for your consideration. Leaf blowers present serious health risks and produce hazardous environmental impacts. The good news is that the use of mulch mowers eliminates the need for leaf blowers, electric or gas-powered. Parks Foreman Mario Velardo, is he the Parks Foreman for
He's the
Village
town
also?
Parks Foreman?
Town Parks Foreman, okay. He'll be demonstrating the magic of mulch mowing at Saturday's Earth Day event at the Ossining Lawnmower booth at 2:15 and 3:30. And then the Ossining Lawnmower representatives will be there from 10 to 5 to talk about equipment options. So I hope everybody stops by to see that. I'll be at the booth next door with Cooperative Extension, so we can answer some questions on lawns too. My key objections to leaf blowers are the health hazards, which was so well discussed at the work session, but particularly for laborers who use these machines 7 hours a day, 6 days a week for 7 to 8 months every year. The environmental impacts of emissions and devastating wind force of these machines. Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico with wind speeds of 155 miles per hour. Electric and gas-powered leaf blowers can have velocities greater than that, which causes topsoil depletion and compacts soil from loss of essential organic matter. Compacted soils cause stormwater runoff, creating pollution and siltations in our waterways and river. The hurricane-force winds are extremely impactful to plants and wildlife. I also oppose the noise and the impactful carbon footprint. I ask you that you also consider the Town of Rise legislation, which is number 133.7 of their legislation, which they adopted in 2008. A couple things you already are addressing, but they ban all gasoline and electric leaf blowers between May 1st and September 30th every year. This time restriction, so I think your restriction, you're saying you're doing the spring cleanup and the fall cleanup, which is a different way than I've seen it done, but that would do it. But really, by May 1st, spring cleanup is done. And then from May 1st to September 30th, you should not be dealing with leaves, because if you have a leaf problem, there's probably a problem with your trees until they start dropping after September 30th. This restriction allows landscapers and residents the ability to perform spring and fall cleanup when leaves are present and when leaf blowers would be most useful. Through education about mulch mowing, the need for leaf blowers in our lawns and gardens could become practically obsolete. This seasonal ban allows for the possibility of that transition while realizing an immediate reduction of the harmful impacts of leaf blowers.
You can finish your thought, but
thank
then
you.
we have to move on.
There is in that law no restriction on property size, and I don't think that there should be property size restriction on more than a half an acre. Right now, a lot of the
Okay.
landscapers are using 4 leaf blowers at a time, blowing the same leaves.
Got it.
So there should be a restriction.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who's come to address the board?
Welcome. Leaf blowers is a hot topic tonight.
Hello. So, my comments on this.
If you wouldn't mind identifying yourself and where
Sure.
you live.
My name is
Sorry.
Greg Meyer, resident of the Village of Ossining. And I just wanted to say that this legislation is something that we have throughout communities in Westchester. So implementing it here really is not a big deal. We have similar legislation in Rye, Tuckahoe, Yonkers, Larchmont, Ardsley, Mamaroneck, Hastings, Sleepy Hollow, New Rochelle, Carytown, Scarsdale, Pelham, Dobbs Ferry, Irvington, Buchanan, and Greenberg. So the idea that this will somehow jeopardize businesses or landscapers, I think, is totally false. And it's been implemented there without businesses going under, so I think we can do it here. It's best for the environment, it's best for our community, so I hope we can enact it soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else?
I think so.
Good evening. My name is Marco Gonsalves. I reside at 19 McCarthy Drive and also on several properties throughout the village. The first thing about the health-wise of the blower pollution is it's a two-cycle motor, which there are several types of two-cycle motors. It's not just a blower. And the EPA has done their part in reducing the emissions over the last 5 years of that. There's all new kinds of carburetors on them, and they're much less pollutant than they were. From what I understand, the presentation that was given to you was showing photos that were over 15 years old, showing pollution, which is no longer an issue. The other thing is that leaf blowers just are not used for leaves. They're used for keeping all the properties neat, just not for leaves, but grass clippings and any kind of debris that happens during construction projects. So taking that away from us during the summer months will result in a larger economical cost to all the residents here. If time is money, leaf blowers do it in 10 seconds, what takes a guy with a broom an hour to do. So you have to take that into account, that it's almost like another tax on your residents, that you're going to make us charge them more and they have to pay more to have a nicer property. We also apply fertilizers and weed controls that spill onto walkways, and we use blowers to clean that up. So if we don't have a blower to clean that up, you now are leaving pesticides on walkways, which is actually against the DEC rules. So then you'll be implementing that issue. I can keep going, but I'm not a big public speaker, so I welcome colleagues to come up and emphasize the issues at hand. All right?
Thank you, Mr.
Have a good night.
Gonsalves.
I'm Vinny DeSisto. I'm owner of Ossining Lawnmower. I do live in Yorktown, but my business is here in Ossining for 52 years. Question is, when do you're saying you're going to put this law into effect towards the fall, or you have?
Can you pause it, Chief? There is not a law for us to vote on yet. Right now,
Right.
what we're doing is we're figuring out what we might want the parameters to be, and to have more conversations, more than this. You're given 3 minutes to just say your idea, and
sure.
we're just really listening tonight. Once we decide what would be any terms of any change in the legislation, we would call for a public hearing, and there would be another opportunity for people to comment like this. But before we get to that point, we want to hear a lot more from people in the community. So there's no law that's being determined right now. So it takes a little bit of time to do the public hearing, have the public hearing, and then the law has to be sent up to Albany. Doesn't happen that fast, and right now, we're not to that stage yet. We're just at the decision-making stage of what might be in it.
The reason why I asked is the cost of going to a battery-operated blower is $700 to $800, because they're going to have to buy a blower, 2 batteries, and a charger, and it's going to do 10% of what the gasoline blower does. So they're already have cost in effect to them, so it's going to be more cost. And most of them will tell you they're still cutting grass for the same amount that they cut 30 years ago. Their prices haven't really gone up much. The other thing is the fairness of who's going to be able, who this is affect in terms of you're exempting the towns and villages, churches?
No.
No?
There's
Corporations?
been no, at this point, there's no exemption.
Okay, all right. Because you have GE, Ossining, that I don't know how you're going to get in there to give them a ticket. And there's tons of churches in town. You have a village and a town in Ossining, which most towns don't have. I have an idea that we were talking about, is like maybe banning, when it comes to June 2nd to September, is maybe allowing them to use the blower from Monday to Friday from like 9 to 4, and ban it on the weekend, so, that, most homeowners are home, they won't hear the noise. I thought that might be an idea. So they can get their work done in the 5-day week, work period, not early and not too late. Like I said, from like 8 to 4, 9 to 4, something like that. What else did I want to say? And echoing Marco with the chemicals that they do put on law, it is a law that they clean up after themselves. So this would be another way of them still being able to use their blowers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. DeSisto.
Bless you.
Hello.
Good evening.
My name is Raphael Triana. I reside in Spring Valley Road, but I own a couple properties here in Ossining too. Vinny just mentioned about the weekends and whatnot, but for me, being a homeowner, I work all week. I go to my properties on Sundays, Saturdays. People throw parties. It's not just clean up during the early months of the leaves. They throw a party. They leave the house as a mess. I got to go there and clean it up. I work during the week. I do it during the weekend. I get my blower out, half an hour, 2 hours. I clean it up. I want to get back to my kids. I don't want to spend my Sunday cleaning up, but I have to do it. And going to battery operated. I'm an electrician. I use battery tools all day long. It's not the same. It's not the same. And that's about it. When and where we're going to draw a line of what can't use in your property. And the fact that I love Vinny, but I spent a couple $1,000s in blowers to have at each property. Now, who's going to reimburse me for that? Then I got to go spend more money, and especially in rental properties. I'm not really making a killing. I just get them by, pay my mortgage. Hopefully, in 30 years, I can retire and sell them. But it's just more expenses that, like someone like me, like I said, I spent over $1,000 last year just buying blowers. So now what? I got to do it again. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
Doesn't have to just be about blowers.
Is anything on the list?
I'm not here about blowers, although I will say 2 blowers for under a half an acre seems like a lot. I have half an acre. I don't need 2 blowers. But I'm actually here on an interesting separate. My name is Kim Jeffrey, and I live at 100B Morningside Drive. I'm not a resident of the village, but I very much love it. I'm here on tethering laws. I never thought that I'd be standing in front of you speaking about this particular issue, but it came to me in a very strange way. Believe it or not, before it was a conversation that it seems to have been in front of you, I had said to my husband, because I'm a proud dog owner, we should buy something where we could stick in the ground and tie Billy up to so she could be outside all the time and run around. And I was like, do they have such a thing? And we kind of put that aside. And then the next thing I knew that there was this whole conversation about how tying up a dog is one of the worst things you could ever do in life. And social media can be a great place, but it also can have some negative influences. And there was a very big discussion with respect to a particular family and a dog. So I want to give an analogy about children, which I also have children. There's a wide space between neglect and abuse in terms of how people raise their children. And some people let their kids stay out all day in cold weather, running around, and another parent would never allow their child to do such a thing. And one group of parents might think that that was kind of neglectful or abusive, that they would let their children run around in 20-degree weather all day long, and other people would not. And some people let their children stay unsupervised for periods of time, and some people do not. I think going back to animals, people treat their animals in very different ways based on the needs of those particular animals. I happen to have an animal, a dog, who I got from our beautiful SPCA right here in Greater Ossining, who loves the snow and would stay outside in the snow for hours if we let her, and we have let her. And whether she's tied or not, she has the ability to sit or scratch at the door. Some people have houses outside where their dogs can go inside. And the other thing that people do all the time is they crate their animals inside all day long. So when we start talking about, you know, what seemingly should be allowed in terms of being owners of very precious animals, I think we have to pay attention to the fact that just because somebody believes that maybe that might not be the best way does not mean that they're necessarily correct. Thank you for hearing the other side.
Thank you, Ms. Jeffrey.
Thank you, Ms. Jeffrey.
Is there anyone else?
I believe so.
Don't rush.
All right, good evening. My name is Katie Milcarrick Burke. I've been a Village of Ossining homeowner for 4 years now. I previously rented in Terrytown, which is a place, to my understanding, that has a leaf blowing ban every weekend. You can't use the leaf blower Saturdays and Sundays year-round. So I had no idea what I was getting myself into when I bought my home, which sits on 1/10 of an acre. My property borders 4 other neighbors. They're all great, but all of them use leaf blowers for lawn maintenance. And while I understand that really great spring and fall cleanup sessions are totally necessary, some of the landscapers use leaf blowers all summer long, Saturday and Sunday, my only 2 days off, when there's no leaves on the ground. Sorry, I'm out of breath.
Take your time.
You know, my property has a fence, and my neighbor is right next door. It's a pretty long fence, and my dining room is just 12 feet away from where blowing goes on my Saturdays. I have to run around and close all the windows because of the dust and dirt that gets into the air. I can't afford air conditioning. In December 2017, I completed a graduate degree in public health, and it's been a many disturbing Saturday or Sunday afternoon trying to write a paper about air pollution or cancer, all by listening to these damaging machines. And we know that they're damaging to our air, our soil, wildlife, and perhaps most importantly, the operators. Our own New York State Department of Environmental Conservation warns of the environmental ills of these machines. Using a gas leaf blower for 1 hour is equivalent to breathing in the carbon monoxide of a car for 8 hours. And let's be honest, we've all seen landscaping employees who aren't using the required or recommended precautions. Please improve the quality of life for Ossining residents, particularly on the weekends in the summer when I'd love to be outside, and enact a seasonal ban. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome. Hi, guys. How are you? To address Kim's comment, I'm actually one of those people who have my teenage son leashed outside in 20-degree weather.
Could you identify yourself, please?
Elizabeth Harlow.
Thank you.
Nobody would complain. And I am Katie's neighbor, and I can assure you that this is affecting our life. So thank you for the time to discuss this important issue. I have lived in the Sparta section of Ossining, and I've been a proud resident of Ossining for the last 20 years. Personally, I use a landscaping company to keep my property looking nice. I'm a busy mom and realtor. However, I've become exceptionally frustrated by the noise of the gas leaf blowers most spring, summer, and fall, Saturdays and Sundays. I am in support of enacting this seasonal ban for leaf blowers. It's already April, and I have been chased inside by a neighbor using a gas blower. Just this past weekend, I was trying to sit outside for a nice spring day, and instead of the peace and quiet I was expecting, I needed to go inside because the blowing was ruining it for me. I've recently learned that the noise from two-stroke gas leaf blowers averages 95 to 115 decibels, or more than 8 times as noisy as a car passing on a residential street. The noise from these leaf blowers carries across Sparta and is particularly bad when you have landscapers blowing from 2 different directions on a small property. Ossining homeowners like the residents of Terrytown, White Plains, Sleepy Hollow, and Scarsdale should be able to spend time outside enjoying our properties. This is supposed to go hand in hand with life in the suburbs. I want my weekends back. Please enact the seasonal ban.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Not seeing anyone. May I have a motion to adjourn?
One second. Do we need to do executive session for matters of personnel related to specific persons?
Okay, so it's an adjournment to executive session.
So moved.
Second.
On the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you very much. Please join us next week for our work session. We'll be back at 16 Croton Avenue, Village Hall. This meeting is adjourned to executive session.